Thank you for joining me on a quilting tale today. My name is Shaylin, and this marks my 100th YouTube video on my channel, which I'm very excited about and really can't believe. I thought since it's the 100th video, there should be some fun things in here to share. And I'm also going to include a little giveaway later on in the video that I'll tell you about just to celebrate. In this video, I want to share a finished quilt top and a pieced backing that I made to go along with it. I'm going to also show you a few finished small projects that I've made since my last video. And I've also made a decision about what my next quilt is going to be following this video. But before I get into that, I thought it would be fun to share a little bit of background about why I started this channel. I've never really talked about it on the channel for all the videos that I've done. I started quilting in 2009. That's when I made my first quilt. And really, it was just a way to get to know my future mother-in-law. My husband and I were dating at the time, and I just wanted to get to know her more. And so I asked her if she could show me how to make a quilt because I knew she enjoyed quilting. And so over the course of several evenings after work, we worked on a quilt together. I got to know her over those visits, and she really became a great friend. And I just knew I had to marry my husband because I didn't want to lose her as a mother-in-law. So it was just a wonderful intro into quilting. And for several years, I only would quilt when she was around because I just did not feel confident following pattern directions, and I wanted her to do a block first and show me how it was done. And so she really instilled that early confidence in me. So for several years, I would just make a quilt for a special occasion or for a recipient. So, someone's having a baby or my girls came along and I made them quilts. And I didn't really get into the kind of quilting that I do now, which is just a regular part of my life, until 2020. I am a school teacher. I've taught middle school and now elementary school. And in 2020, when the schools got shut down and we had to go to virtual learning, I couldn't stand that time, really. I did not like teaching virtually. I did not like filming lessons before we would do the Zoom meeting lessons. We were just filming and uploading them, and that was a whole new world to me, and I did not enjoy teaching that way. But it did get me used to talking to a camera because it did feel weird for the longest time. But I think had it not been for that experience, I may not have started this channel because the idea of talking to a camera was just not something that I thought I could do. During that same time, quilting became more than just a hobby to me. It just became a sanctuary away from all the screens. It kept my hands busy. It quieted my mind. It was just something that wasn't on the computer because I felt like during that time there was so much screen time happening. And so I just was happy to get into quilting. And I got a book, The Splendid Sampler, that took me through all kinds of different quilting techniques and really boosted my confidence. And I think that was the book that unlocked pattern reading for me and just made me feel like, okay, I can take on just about any pattern. And so I was stepping up the challenges with my next quilt and my next, and I could see myself growing and getting better. And that was exciting. And also during that time, I was watching YouTube and seeing all these other quilters on YouTube that I never really watched it before and didn't realize that there was such a thing on YouTube. And I just found it to be such a happy corner of the internet and one that I looked forward to watching, and I still do today. And so that's what made me really want to be a part of it, because I felt like I'm learning and I'm pushing my skills, and just the teacher in me loves to pass along those tips and help people improve their quilting, even while I'm improving myself. And I also wanted it to be a place where you could just be inspired or just relax and enjoy and unwind, because many videos and many channels have been different things to me. And so I've really tried to make this channel a place that does that for others. So that's why I started the channel. And like I said, 100 videos in, I'm so excited. That's such a feat for me. I started the channel just about 5 years ago. And so I don't get to post videos as often as I'd like, but I'm really proud of what I have been able to put out there. And I hope that you've enjoyed, whether you're new to the channel or you've been with me since the beginning. I hope you found something of value in it. So all that being said, let's talk about the quilt top that I am finishing today. If you watched my video that I posted in January with my plans for my quilts this year, you'll know that I'm a little behind. This quilt was my hope for finishing in February. It's my 2025 Year of Sewing Machines, which is a bundled pattern by Heather Briggs of My So Quilty Life. And I had wanted to finish this quilt in February. I had started it last year in 2025, and it didn't get finished. And I took March to work on it, and I just finished it now that we're a little into the beginning of April, heading into mid-April. So it took a bit longer than I anticipated, but it was well worth it. And yes, I'm behind in my pacing as I anticipated and mentioned in that video, but I'll talk at the end of the video about my plans and some readjustments I'm thinking of. But like I said, this quilt was worth it. And so if you haven't seen earlier videos I've made, I have a playlist that has all the videos related to this quilt. I have videos talking about color choice because I did not use any pre-cuts on this or a single fabric line. This is solely shopping my stash, and it's a great stash busting quilt if you're interested in one. So I talked about color choices and picking the fabrics. I won't go into that much depth in this video about it since I've covered it, but really the words I'm using to describe the fabrics I'm choosing for this top are subtle, subdued, dusty, burnt. They're just not vibrant, vivid, bold, pastel. So anything that would fall under one of those words, I steered clear of for this one. And I was just looking for really understated colors in this. And that was all because of the first block I made, which was my January block. It kind of matched that subtle, muted colorway that I wanted to stick with. And so that's what I built from. And so a lot of Tilda, French General, Minky Kim, those kinds of lines seem to work well, but I used many fabrics from many different lines and designers. Another video talked about each individual block and the considerations that went into those blocks and how they related to each other. And you can just see a close-up of those. And I did show the making of one of those blocks in the last video. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I made the sashing pieces. Heather Briggs gave two different setting options. One was kind of simple, clean straight line borders, and it just looks like the sewing machines are on a shelf just in rows. And then there was another option, which I did for this quilt top, that has sewing items. So there were jars and pin cushions and pin dishes, and then some blank shelves too, and spools of thread. So I'm going to show you how I made those and how I put the rows together and made the scalloped border that was also one of the setting options. And then I'm doing a pieced backing that includes the year on the back. And so that was really fun to make, and it turned out beautifully. So I'll share that in this video as well. I won't go into a lot of depth with the sashing pieces because I did show more of those coming together and talked about them in a recent video where I went on what I called a quiltcation. I'll link that video below, but it was a beautiful, relaxing trip, and I got to work on these sashing pieces and complete them there. So if you want to hear more about what went into those, or just see a beautiful place that's perfect for quilting, I'd encourage you to check that video out. In addition to finishing that quilt top, I'll also show you my progress on my homespun quilt, which is a pattern by Lo and Behold Stitchery, and I am caught up with that one. I completed the month 2 blocks, and they are gorgeous. And I also have some exciting news that goes along with this quilt along, which I'll share then. So this is an active quilt along happening now, and I happen to be caught up with it. So I'll show you the progress on that, as well as a few small projects that I finished. I've made 3 French seam pillowcases and all the antiques that I'd been holding on to that I mentioned in my last video. I have finally turned those into pin cushions. So I got a lot of little projects done in March, and I'll share those with you as well, and the links to the videos showing you how I made those pin cushions and the French seam pillowcases. So I've talked long enough. Let's get into how I finished the 2025 Year of Sewing Machines quilt top and pieced backing. Before I started piecing my sashing strips, I just pulled colors that I thought would work well to go along with the fabrics I've already used in my quilt. And I used a lot of my tubs where I had 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, and 5 inch strips. And so I pulled an assortment of pinks, and I figured these would be my jars. Some of these I've used, like I said, some of them I haven't, but I just think the colors will go nicely. For the pin cushions, I'm going to use some of my darker, dustier reds, so I thought any of these could work. Some do look a little brighter than others, but still not like a fire engine or apple red. They just read a little more burgundy, or they're just a really muted red. So pin cushions. And then for the little dishes, I pulled some oranges and corals. Again, trying to go more understated, not really saturated or vivid. And then for the spools, I wanted to use my greens. I think most of these greens I used. I just, again, took what I had in my scrap bin. And I'm not sure that I'll use the purple. I used a little bit of purple in my April block, and I just felt like I should try to tie it in somewhere else. So we'll see. And then I just pulled all these kind of beiges and grays to be the ends of the spools. So I have way more than I need, but I just wanted to pull an assortment so I have some options and just to give some examples of what could work. And then I also went ahead and assembled all 16 bases because they're going to be the same. So these are ready to go, and then I'll just make the tops of them. They're going to be different sizes depending on what object I'm making. So I'm going to go ahead and start, I think, with the spools because that's next. I'll just pick some greens and some ends for the spools, and I'll get started. I've got all my pieces for the spool cut, and I have it so I can do 3 at a time with some chain piecing. So I have my spool with the top and bottom pieces kind of lined up. And so I have enough to make 3, and I'll just grab the bottoms too as I need them to finish. My 3 spool units are finished, and having the bottom pieces done ahead of time allowed for the 3 spools to come together in a matter of minutes. So 3 sashing strips down, 13 to go. I'm going to do the pin cushions next, and I'll go ahead and place these between the blocks where I want them. Here's my placement so far with the spools. I decided to put this green one with the stripe next to March because even though it has a lot of green in it, I don't have the stripe in this block. The other 2 are in that block, so I just spread them out a little more. So here is April. I put the little polka dot spool next to it, and then diagonally across between July and August. There's just a little bit of green in that watermelon, but I thought it would spread it around a bit. And since I can't put each type of sashing piece in each row, I just want to make sure that they're pretty evenly dispersed throughout the quilt. I've selected the fabrics for my pin cushion, and I made sure to choose 3 different greens that I haven't used in the spools. And then I chose some of my dustier reds or burgundies. I'm going to do some fussy cutting with this one. I've got all my vertical sashing strips attached in between the blocks and on the ends of the blocks. So I have my 4 rows all put together. And so now what's left is making the horizontal sashing strips. And these are going to be just skinny strips that go the length of the rows. So I'll show you how I'll cut those. As I mentioned before, I have a lot of this white background fabric left. And so instead of wrangling this whole piece, because I don't think I'll need all of it, I ended up cutting this piece off, and this is going to be enough to give me my width of fabric strips I need to cut for the sashing. So I need 12 of them. So I took how many inches wide they need to be multiplied by 12. I added about 4 extra inches to give some room for shrinkage when I use my spray bottle and water to just press and get these wrinkles out. And so from there, I will cut my width of fabric strips. And I will show you a way to make sure that the fabric is truly all squared up so that when you cut the strips, you don't get that bowing in the middle, that they can stay at 90-degree angles with the fold. So let me get this prepped and then I'll show you that step. All right, I have sprayed my fabric with just my water misting bottle and ironed it to get as many of the wrinkles out as I can. And so now I'm going to work on really squaring up the fabric so I can get truly square strips that don't bow like I mentioned. So when fabric is wrapped around a bolt, it can go crooked. So we can't always rely on that deep crease that is in the fabric to be our straight line. So what we can do is take our selvage edges and line them up all the way across. And this is why it helps to deal with a smaller piece instead of all the background fabric I have at once. But I'm just going to line up the selvage edges and hold them, both ends, and I'm just going to shake and let a new fold fall into place. So I'll set it down gently, and then I'm going to get a new fold line here, and I'll take it to the ironing board and press, and I'll shake it up there too, but I just want to show you how I get this new fold line. And you'll see, if we look at it closely, that my 2 sides are no longer lined up where I cut it with the rotary cutter because it wasn't perfectly square to begin with. Same thing on this end. I used a ruler and cut, but there's quite a bit sticking out on this side. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to build in a few extra inches, not only because fabric can shrink when you starch it or best press it, or in my case, use the water, but also when we're trying to square it up, there might be some crooked spots where we need to trim off the excess. So I'm going to shake this again at the ironing board the same way and press a new fold line going across. All right, here is that new fold pressed in. I just used a dry iron, and you can see how it's a little see-through looking here. It's not all lined up, but the selvages are all lined up nicely. And then on this side, there is quite a bit of overhang. So once I get these edges cleaned up, I will start cutting my strips according to the pattern size, making those with the fabric strips. So I'm just going to line up one of the solid lines on my ruler to the fold line and just get it close enough to the edge where I know I'm going to cut both layers nice and straight here. And so I'm going to hold this down and cut. And so from there, I'm going to carefully turn this over, or you could rotate the mat. Make sure it's in the camera view. And I'm just going to measure the size strips that I need, lining it up on this side of my ruler and a solid line with the fold down below here. And I'm just going to cut 12 of these. And I don't like using the floor, but I have the most quiet and space in here for filming and better lighting. So for the sake of filming, I'll use the floor, but I can't do too much of this. If your ruler happens to go crooked or it's no longer lining up, just cut a little sliver off to get your straight edge and use that fold as your guide to line up your horizontal ruler mark. So to prepare these to be sashing strips, I'm going to cut off the selvages. And so I'm just using the horizontal line of the strip to line up with a horizontal line of my ruler. And I'm just lining it up so I know that my selvages will be cut off. And you could probably line up several of these all at once, but I'm just going to do it one at a time. But the next step after this, according to the pattern, is to sew all the strips together. So I'm going to make a really long sashing strip. Once I get these sewn together, it's just a straight line, not like binding where you do it at a 45-degree angle. But once I get these all sewn together, I'll wrap it around like a paper towel tube or something to keep track of it. And so I'll just sew one end to an end of the row, and then when I get to the other end of the row, just cut it off from that long roll of sashing and just keep going from there. So almost like tape. There are all my pieces ready to sew. So I'm going to do that next. I've gone ahead and pressed the fold lines out of each strip, and then I've connected them. And so now I've just been flattening the seams open and just rolling this long strip up on a toilet paper roll here. So the pattern tells you how long to cut each strip for the length of each row, and these will also be side borders. I'm just going to attach to the end of a row and sew and just keep unrolling it as I'm sewing, and I'll cut it as needed. Not sure if that's the best way to do it, but I just feel like that way I'll know it's the right length for the row. You can also, like I said, use the pattern and cut it to size. But because some of these strips are going to be over 70 inches long, I just feel like I'll be more accurate cutting it as needed at the end of the row. And I know that assumes that my rows are the right length, but I just feel comfortable with the accuracy of my piecing that that will be the case. So that's how I'm going to do it, but you can certainly cut the strips to the right size of the rows ahead of time. One other thing I like to do as I'm assembling the top is doing the top half first and then the bottom half separately, and then join them at the end, just so it's not so much bulk under my machine. So I will be doing that as I attach these horizontal sashing strips. I've got the first sashing strip attached to the bottom of the first row, and it's still attached to my big roll of sashing. So now I'm just going to flip this over, and I'll use my ruler, line it up with the edge of my block. I'm checking that I have the edge of the sashing lined up with a ruler line. It looks like it's going straight, so I'm making a right angle, and I'll just cut that off. And now I'm ready to press toward the sashing strip. So I'll do that, press toward the sashing, and then attach the second row. And again, the first two rows all connect together. Row 3 and 4 will get connected together, and then I'll put them all together. So let's take a look at my plan for the pieced backing again. My backing fabric is directional, and so I just have a long piece of yardage that I'm going to need to cut into fourths. So that's what these white rectangles are here. And because I won't have enough length, if I do that, I'm going to use what's left of my border fabric, that Sage Solid, to surround the 2025 year here. So when I do my year, everything that's white in the background is going to be sage for me. In my last video, I posed the question of should I use 2025, or the pattern offers a 6, 7, and 8, so you can change the year, because I finished in 2026. And I decided to keep it at 2025 because that's when this project took place and when I started it. And I'll just make a label that says it's finished in 2026. And so it'll have both represented there. But this was the 2025 year of sewing machines. And so I thought I would just stick with the original intent. So now I need to make some final fabric decisions. I know I want a white sewing machine, and the background is going to be sage. And so I need to look at a couple things to make that cohesive. Here's my background one more time and the sage piece, and I think these look beautiful together. The white fabric I have in mind that I just really want to use because of the vintage rose look on it is brighter than the fabrics I've been using on my quilt top. So to tone it down just a little, I'm going to be very deliberate with the accent fabric I use for the spool and the knob at the side. And I found this fabric in my stash that I think fits the bill perfectly. So this is remnants of a quilt I did many years ago called Return to Winter's Lane. And it matches the curtain color in the backing fabric perfectly. It also ties in with that light kind of aqua color on the tips of the leaves on my white brighter fabric. And when I put it against my sage fabric, it will be light enough to stand out and not get lost in the background, but it also has these darker sage stripes running through it. So I think this piece is what's going to tie this together nicely. And because the block is just a 6.5-inch block unfinished, it's not going to be a large amount of this bright fabric where it's going to throw everything off. So I can't wait to put this together. I'm going to get to cutting the rest of my pieces and then I'll assemble the block. Look at how cute this is. All right, now I just need to make the numbers to go around it. As I mentioned in my last video about this quilt, I got what was left on a bolt, so I don't have quite enough of this fabric as a backing fabric as the pattern suggests. So I'm doing a pieced backing. So I can add as much length as I want to this because I can make that middle band that says the year as tall as I want it. But what was really important though, because this is directional, is that it's wide enough side to side when I piece it. And this will be, but what I'm going to do is I've pinned the selvages together, and this side is a much smaller selvage. And so I'm making sure that the wider selvage is on top when I sew. And so I'm just going to use it as a guide and just stitch right before it turns white there. And I know the selvage won't show that way. Now, I know some people trim the selvages off. I am keeping it on for a couple of reasons. One, this is art gallery fabric, and the selvage feels very thin. It doesn't feel much different than the rest of the fabric. Two, the print is just so busy that I don't worry about the selvage showing through on the other side, even though a lot of it is white. And then this side, of course, just looks like the print. So I'm going to keep the selvage on. When I piece backings, I do more than 1/4 inch, typically a 1/2 inch. If the selvages are trimmed off, I'll do a 1/2 inch. Otherwise, I just use the selvage as a guide. So it's just wide enough because it's going to have more stress with the weight of the quilt, pulling it up. And so I just want to make sure it has a nice thick seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that now. Now I haven't even ironed the wrinkles out of this yet. I haven't trimmed anything besides just getting my length of yardage split into quarters. And so I'm going to make sure that since this one is going to be the bottom piece, I'm going to make sure that the top pieces are aligned, but I did not square anything up here. It's very much, you know, what came off the bolt, how the shop trimmed it. So when I get down to this end, which will be the very bottom of my backing piece, you know, it's not that far off anyway, but I would want any uneven edges to be on the bottom because it's all going to get trimmed off after the long arming anyway. If this were the top piece that goes above the year stripe, then I would want to make sure that the bottom is all lined up, and then the top wouldn't matter as much because that would be the very top of the backing, and that will get trimmed as well. Here's the 2025 year band put together. It goes across the center of the quilt, and I just love how it looks with that bright white popping against the sage background, and that'll really tie in nicely with the border on the other side. Now, I can't fit this whole backing piece in my camera frame, so I will put a picture of it up in a little bit here so you can see what it looks like in its entirety, but I will just pull up some of the backing fabric so you can see it next to the year band here. So again, that sage really plays well with that light kind of aqua color in the backing fabric. And of course, these little accent pieces in the sewing machine are just a great match to that. Now I've made sure to leave extra inches of backing on the top, bottom, and the sides for long arming. So this should end up pretty close to being centered by the time it's all long armed and trimmed. So now that my backing is finished, let's take a look at the completed top. It needs a little bit of ironing, but it is a beauty. All right, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned a giveaway to celebrate 100 videos and to thank you for watching. And so I'm going to be giving away this beautiful fat quarter bundle. It's called Day in the Life by Echo Park Paper Company of Riley Blake Designs. And I will zoom in and show these fat quarters to you up close while I'm talking. But there are a lot of beautiful florals, some rainbows, dots, and stripes checkerboard. So lots of fun prints in here. So here's how you enter. Due to shipping costs, this is unfortunately only going to be open to residents of the United States. So you must have a United States mailing address in order to win. And to enter, you need to be subscribed to my channel and leave me a comment. You can tell me your favorite quilt pattern, what kind of fabrics you like, how long you've been quilting. It doesn't even have to be related to quilting. You can just tell me something interesting about yourself. I love reading viewer comments. So the entry window will be open for a week until Sunday, April 19th, 2026 at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. At that point, I will close the entries and use a randomizer to choose a comment. And if I see that you are subscribed, I will let you know that you won by pinning a comment at the top of this video. So on Monday, April 20th, 2026, probably closer to the evening, Pacific Standard Time when I'm off work, I will post a comment, and I'll also reply to your comment letting you know that you won. So I'll try to cover a couple bases to notify you, but I will let you know how to get in touch with me and verify that it's you, and we'll get this shipped to you. And then if I don't hear from whoever's drawn in a week, then we'll do another random drawing until we get someone and I hear back from someone. So I hope it's you. Good luck. Now let's get back into the projects and talk about the homespun quilt. As I mentioned before, a subscription to the Homespun Quilt Along came with pre-quilt, where you could choose different colors and try out different manufacturers and see what solids you liked in this quilt. And so this is the colorway that I planned out on pre-quilt, and I'm calling it Boughs of Holly. And so this is kind of a Christmas colored quilt. And month one was all about making the checkerboard and stripe pieces here, as well as these little diamond and a square. There's 10 of them, 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom. So month two is making these star blocks, and there are 3 different variations of them. So let me show you how mine turned out. So I made 4 of the sawtooth star block ones. And this one kind of has the square and a square going on in the center. And then I have 4 of the block 2s. They're also sawtooth stars. And this is kind of just the inverse colors here. And block 3 is solid in the center. So there's also 4 of those. So I learned a lot this month, and I've made sawtooth stars before. I've made flying geese before. Brittany of Lo and Behold Stitchery had the 4 at a time method, which I've tried and haven't been a big fan of before. But after a lot of trial and error, mostly because I didn't pay close enough attention to her videos that come with the subscription to this quilt along, I was able to do really well with them and get accurate flying geese. But I wanted to show you my mistakes. Just as a reminder, even if you've been quilting for a long time, slow down, make a test block. I just thought I know what I'm doing and just did all kinds of things wrong. I had cut my squares on the diagonal twice instead of once, so I ended up with all these tiny little triangles that I didn't need. And then I had made my flying geese and had just, lined up one of the lines and trimmed to the size I needed, not trying to center the line. And so I have these pieces where some of them are a little wider on this end when they're supposed to be like this and meet at the corner. And so Brittany had troubleshooting for that issue. And then some of these had this extra little flap of fabric where the seam allowances overlap, and they're not quite, my seam allowances weren't quite large enough, I found out during the troubleshooting videos. So after a lot of error that could have been avoided had I just gone through all the directions carefully and watched her videos for troubleshooting tips, ahead of time, I was able to come out with these really accurate flying geese. And so I'm really happy with how these blocks turned out. I thought this was going to be an easy month. I thought, oh, sawtooth stars, no problem. But it actually took quite a bit of time. And so when it came time to make the mystery blocks, because there is extra fabric left over, I did not have enough of this green because I had just used it all here. And so I contacted, lo and behold, and one of their wonderful admin said I could use one of the other greens. She looked at my month one blocks and said I could use one of those greens and it should be fine because this is a mystery quilt and I just, I'm not sure how it all goes together. But for this one, we made several half square triangles and you pick 8 of them and just arrange them however you'd like. So they could all be the same or 3 different ones, but this is what I ended up choosing. And again, I don't know how this is going to go with the other mystery blocks. That's going to be the fun part of this, is by the end, there's supposed to be this nice lap size quilt that will coordinate. So that's the mystery blocks. And then I also have a picture of all my sawtooth star blocks. You can see them a little more. But while I was on my quiltcation, I was checking my email and I got an email from, lo and behold, that I had won the month one giveaway that they were doing. I was so excited to get these in the mail. So the month one giveaway came with this fat quarter bundle, 16 fat quarters from Art Gallery Fabrics. It's called Fairview Avenue. And I just love these colors. They're those rich, earthy tones that I've been drawn to so much lately. That one's so pretty. And little pops of blue in there. So I can't wait to use this in a quilt. And these rich plums. So, so pretty. And then I got this 3-piece Notion set from Modern American Vintage. It came with a seam ripper, a point turner, and a Hera marker. And these just feel so smooth and lightweight in my hands. I've followed their Instagram page for a long time. I love their clappers. And so it's just kind of spendy to, I keep thinking when I look at the tools, I think they're so beautiful and come with different woods and finishes. And I never thought I would own any of their tools, but man, they are beautiful. And I was so happy to receive those. And then it also came with a year subscription to Pre-Quilt. So I've already been watching some YouTube videos on how to use that program. That's the same program that allowed me to mock up this quilt pattern with different colors. So apparently I can make my own patterns and build blocks and quilts and change the color. So I'm excited to try that and do some quilt designing. I have EQ8, which I haven't become very confident with. And so since I have this for a year, I'm going to give it a try and see if it is any more intuitive to me, but I'm excited for all of this. And so I'm just happy to be keeping up with the monthly projects because keeping up with them allows you to enter their contests and they have some good giveaways. So this was wonderful. But let's look now at some other smaller finished projects that I made in March. I made 3 pillowcases, just assembling them at the same time and chain piecing. So I made 3 at once using a free pattern from Quilt Addicts Anonymous, her French seam pillowcase pattern. It's wonderful. I've made several pillows with it. I've also made some quilted pillows doing some 5-inch charm square patchwork. And so I made a video showing how I adapted it to fit her pattern. And I also made a video talking about when you have directional fabric, you need a little more than what her pattern says. And so I show how I make that adjustment. I'll link my videos for how I've adjusted, as well as her video that shows how to make these wonderful, easy, beautiful pillowcases that really hold up. These have been washed several times, and I thought it would be easier to show them flat under the camera here because space is limited. But this one is for my daughter, and this is Forest Friends, the fabric line from Cloud9 Fabrics. They're so thick and soft, almost like flannel, but they're not quite. But I had originally planned to make one pillow with the bunnies and one with the yellow mice, but I forgot that I had a whole unicorn set of fabric for my youngest daughter. So my oldest liked both, and so I just made it reversible. So there's these cute little field mice with the strawberries on this side. Then there's a flange that gets sewn down so it doesn't flip when you wash it. And then just the coordinating trim piece. But everything is encased. They're French seam, so you don't have a bunch of raw edges, fraying as you wash it. So these are, again, really simple to make and such high quality. The pillows that I've made years ago and have been washed over and over again, they hold up really nicely. I made this very colorful unicorn pillowcase for my youngest. She had picked this fabric out quite a while ago when she went into a quilt shop with me, and I had just packed it away and forgotten about it until I was starting to make these pillowcases. And so it's really bright. There's this kind of plaid flange, and then I let her pick out all the pieces. So this line was a separate one from this one. I believe these two went together, but I just let her pick what she liked because she loves unicorns. And so it works really well no matter which side of the bed you want to put it on. So again, I made sure to use extra fabric to get it going directionally, where, it doesn't matter which side of the pillow you use, it's going to look nice and be right side up when you're looking at it. And then I also made one just for myself. I loved this fabric and it was on clearance after Christmas. It's an art gallery fabrics, and I just love the seams on this. I thought they were so serene, and I just adore having pink mixed in with Christmas. So all three of these, the flange and the trim piece, come from the same line. Very cute vintage ornaments there. And so these just get softer with each wash. Like I said, they hold up nicely. So I'll pop up a few pictures of them with pillows in them so you can see what they look like when they have a pillow. But lots of fun to make, very easy to make for seasons, holidays, gifts. It's a great tutorial to save to your favorites. They also store quilts nicely. Here's an older one that I made, a more summer glow-in-the-dark camping themed, but I tuck quilts that I'm not using inside just to store them. All right, in one of my earlier videos, I demonstrated how to turn an antique into a pin cushion. This is my absolute favorite. This little dog, it's, I think, originally a planter. There's a little dog with his tongue sticking out here. And so I just use this to keep my clips and pens and all kinds of needles and pins in here. And so I demonstrated the process for any antique that has some kind of opening, how you can turn it into a pin cushion. And I talked about the different types of fill you could use for the cushion. And so I actually saw this exact plant holder again more recently at an antique shop, and I almost grabbed it because I just think these are so cute. But I did not. I ended up, over the last year or so, collecting many other antiques, and I finally turned them into pincushions. So in no particular order, I think maybe this one, because we just had Easter and this one has been on my table, but this was just a little chick with a Easter egg that was all hollowed out again, probably a planter, but I found a great coordinating fabric with the pinks and yellows, very springy, and I just got a smile every time I looked at this on my sewing table. So very sweet. And then in November, when all the Christmas was out at one of my favorite antique stores, I got this little sleigh that says Noel and used some vintage ornament fabric inside. And then this little Santa, I think this was a tea light holder perhaps. And so a smaller pin cushion. And I like the kind of vintage look of the fabric there. So can I just keep all of these in my little glass cabinet and just swap them out as the seasons and holidays change? Those were my Christmassy pin cushions. And then there's always lots of little teacups and little crafts and things. So I got this one. I liked the red, white, and blue. I thought it's kind of that Americana look. And I put a red pin cushion inside of it. So this is the one that's currently on my sewing table. And then I had a couple dogs. So this one I found had a little 30s fabric that I thought looked really nice with the floral painting on this dog. Another sweet little face and bow. And then just to show that even the teeniest, tiniest antiques can make a pincushion, this dog has a hat. And I just got it because I wanted to challenge myself to turn it into a pincushion. And finally, someone in my last video where I was showing these antiques said that these are called Johnson cups. And I just love the image, the scenery on it. So I tried to pick up some of the yellow and the green with this fabric here. And so I thought this one would be a good summer going into fall pin cushion. But it's an egg cup. So you can see you can turn all sorts of antiques as long as they have an opening into adorable little pin cushions to grace your sewing room or sewing space. And so I will definitely link the video that I made showing how to make these and what type of fillings work well. But I made all of these in just a couple hours. I think picking out the fabric took the longest. So a lot of fun to make. You could make great gifts too, or just if you love antiquing, way to combine your hobby if you like sewing or quilting with your love of antiquing. So I'm ready to move on to my next quilt, a brand new quilt. But before I do that, I do have lots of scraps to process and put away just to tidy up my sewing room a little. This is from all the quilts I've been working on and those small projects like the pin cushions and pillowcases. And so I need to get this put away before it becomes overwhelming. But my next project I'm really excited for once I'm all cleaned up here. I'm going to be making the Stars and Stripes Forever kit with the Catalina fabric line. This is a fabric line that came out, I believe, in 2020, and it was hard to find any fabric when I saw it online at that time, but I did find this kit, and I love the pattern, and I just have not gotten around to making it. I haven't made a kit before. I've done some block of the month mystery quilts, but I've never made a kit quilt. And so I'm excited to try this and use that beautiful fabric. And I thought now is as good a time as any with the 250th anniversary of the United States coming up in July. And so this will be the next video that I make. Now, if you saw my plans for 2026, it was my goal to make a patriotic quilt in March, which obviously didn't happen. So I am a bit behind. I'll be making this in April. and maybe into May. We'll see how long it takes. But I think it would be fun to break this up into making the flags and then a video making the star blocks. There's 5 different star options, and that's where you can get some variety in this. You don't have to do it exactly as they did on the cover here. You can pick your favorites or change the position because they're the same size and the same number required. So I'll give that a little more thought, but I thought it would be nice to split this quilt into 2 or 3 videos showing how to put it together. Now, even though I'm behind, because Homespun is my Christmas quilt, July was going to be the month for making a Christmas quilt, perhaps a different one in addition to Homespun, but it might just be that Homespun is my Christmas quilt. And if I stay caught up, I will have a lot of catch-up time in July. So all is not lost for my 2026 plans and finishing my whips, but whether I get them done or not, it's all about enjoying the process and growing and learning. So that's what I aim to do, and I hope my videos inspire you to do so as well. Don't forget, by next Sunday, 9 p.m. Pacific time, enter by subscribing and leaving me a comment to win this gorgeous Fat Quarter bundle. Thank you so much for watching. Again, whether this is your first or you've seen all 100, I appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to making many, many more. Take care and happy quilting.